Coming up next on the Hard Knock University podcast, we're busting the myth of omniscience in project management in episode 4, the myth of omniscience. We're going to dive into chapter 3 of my book, The Hard Knock School of Project Management, exploring why thinking you know it all can actually sabotage your projects. We'll unpack real-life examples where humility outshined hubris, discussing Verbal Judo by George J. Thompson as our book of the week. Learning how to communicate effectively when the answers aren't clear. And I'll sit down with business coach turned contractor Bruce Graham to get his take on navigating projects without all the answers. Plus, we want to hear from you. Share your stories of learning the hard way with the hashtag HardKnockLessons for a chance to be featured right here on the show. Tune in to discover how admitting you don't know everything can lead to the best project outcomes. That's episode 4, The Myth of Omniscience, only on the Hard Knock University podcast.
So that's all that happened to me today. I learned the hard way. Actually, it was a good learning experience for me.
It's called process. You never want to stop learning, because if you do...
You die, right?
In many ways.
I don't understand why you insist on learning things the hard way, Trey, but you gonna learn. Oh yeah, you gonna learn.
I'm not afraid, Mr. Burr. My mind will protect me. I'm a man of science, a man of learning, a man who knows how to buy the finest books.
You're listening to the Hard Knock University podcast. We're sharing hard lessons learned the hard way. Everyone is welcome here. All we ask is that you bring an open mind and a good attitude.
But on the other hand, man, I just as soon keep working, keep a little change in my pocket.
Before we jump into today's episode, let's take a moment to recap what we covered last time on the Hard Knock University podcast. In episode 3, titled Embracing Discomfort, we talked about the entrepreneurial blues of self-employment. We ventured into the heart of what it means to thrive amidst uncertainty, both in project management and in life. We kicked off by diving into chapter 2 of my book, The Hard Knock School of Project Management, lesson number 1, You're Always Uncomfortable, discussing why comfort is a myth in project management, and how embracing discomfort can lead to growth. Our book of the week was What You Do Is Who You Are by Ben Horowitz, linking cultural leadership with handling discomfort in projects, emphasizing that true leadership shows through actions, not just words. We were also joined by the incredible Todd Roth, a blues musician and luthier who shared his journey from music to crafting guitars, drawing insightful parallels between his art and the challenges of project management. His stories on embracing discomfort through whiskey, learning from mistakes, and persisting through change were truly enlightening. Finally, we delved deep into the art of embracing change, understanding that discomfort is not just part of the process, it's where we often do our best work, innovate, and grow. If you missed this episode, I highly recommend you go back and listen. It's packed with lessons on how to turn discomfort into your greatest ally in project management and personal growth and development. So if you haven't yet, head over to our platform, grab the episode titled Embracing Discomfort, and let's learn together on how to dance with the chaos life projects throw our way. And now, before we move on to today's exploration of humility and the myth of omniscience in project management, let's talk about my week. My week. Well, I got pardoned. No, I'm joking. Jokes, folks. I'm trying to make this funny as well as enlightening. There's no reason that personal development and professional development can't also be fun. Let's liven it up a little bit. The book finally came. Well, okay. So what I've been reading to you guys for the book has been like the unedited version. I finally got it back from the editor. I made all the revisions. And then I ordered the proof copy. This is the proof copy. It says not for resale across it. And I was able to kind of look through this and identify a couple of things with the layout and an extra comma that was missed, make some revisions, and then send it back. and now it's ready to publish. So this will actually, when this episode comes out, I believe the book will already be out. So by the time you're listening to this, you can order the book. I created a website, leadershipknocks.com. So go to leadershipknocks.com and you can order the book directly from me, and you can even get a signed autographed copy from me directly. If you don't want to order it from me for some reason, you can also go on Amazon and order it through Amazon. So I'm super excited to finally have the book done and out there and ready for everybody to enjoy. That's super exciting for me. I'm already planning the next book. More on that to come. What else? ChatGPT lost its job to AI. I was actually just getting ready to invest in AI, and then the Chinese hit us with DeepSeek. Apparently, they can spend $6 million and beat our software that took us $16 billion to create. I guess corporate espionage is cheaper than research and development. Anyway, I had a final destination moment. Well, sort of, anyway. I'm sure by now you've all heard about the United Airlines flight that collided with the U.S. military Black Hawk helicopter at Ronald Reagan Airport. I was actually supposed to be there about 2 hours before the collision. We had a company meeting scheduled in Washington, D.C. for Thursday. I was supposed to fly in on Wednesday and meet my team for drinks at the hotel bar. The meeting was canceled last week because of an emergency board meeting, so I ended up not going. And anyway, I could have I would have already left the airport by the time the collision happened, but I would have only been about a mile away. So that was pretty wild. That's my final destination moment. Somehow I accidentally cheated death. No, it's not funny. It's not something to joke about really, but you know, I have a sick sense of humor. So here we are. Anyway, that's my week. Stay tuned because we're going to dive into chapter 3 of my book, The Hard Knock School of Project Management, lesson 2. You'll rarely have all the answers. And I'm actually not going to be the one reading it. We're going to have a special guest. I have to dance around this because I'm not 100% sure about the legalities of how this works. From what I understand, it's perfectly legal to use Speechify to read your book for you on YouTube. It's certainly illegal to say, hey, everybody, Snoop Dogg's reading my book. But I'm going to test the legalities of this, and we're going to use Speechify to read my book in the voice of Snoop Dogg and see if it gets taken down. We're going to try it. All right, guys, stay tuned. Okay. Welcome back, everyone, to the Hard Knock University podcast. Today, we're diving into chapter 3 of the Hard Knock School of Project Management, titled Lesson 2, You'll Rarely Have All the Answers. Here we'll explore the myth of omniscience in project management, the dangerous expectation that project managers should know everything. We'll discuss how this myth can lead to burnout, poor decision-making, and stifle team growth, among other issues. Let's learn why admitting that you don't know everything can be one of the most empowering things you can do. So sit back, take notes, or just listen as we challenge this common misconception and look at real examples from my own journey. Now, via Speechify, Snoop Dogg, take it away.
Chapter 3, Lesson 2, You'll rarely have all the answers. Doubt is not a pleasant condition, but certainty is absurd. Voltaire. The more I learn, the more I realize how much I don't know. Albert Einstein. The Myth of Omniscience. In the world of project management, particularly with a case like Mike Oximo's, there's a pervasive myth that project managers should possess omniscient knowledge. This expectation, however, is not just unrealistic, it's downright harmful. When I first took over Mike's project, I was bombarded with questions and demands that no single person could answer or address without some form of support or research. Why isn't this in the contract? Can't you just fix this? Mike seemed to believe I should know every nuance of construction, law, human psychology, and even the unpredictable behavior of utilities and subcontractors. But here's the truth I learned. No one, not even the most seasoned PM, knows everything. The myth of omniscience starts with the assumption that knowledge is static and finite. The Greek philosopher Socrates famously said, I know that I know nothing, highlighting that the more we learn, the more we realize how much there is still to discover. In project management, This translates to understanding that each project brings new challenges, technologies, regulations, and personalities. Expecting a PM to be an expert in all these areas is setting them up for failure. This expectation can lead to several harmful outcomes. Burnout, the pressure to know everything, can push a PM to work unsustainable hours, sacrificing personal life, health, and well-being in the pursuit of an unattainable goal. I remember nights spent poring over codes and regulations, not because I needed to know it all, but because that's what was expected. Poor decision-making. When you're under the illusion that you must have all the answers, you're less likely to seek help or ask questions. This can lead to decisions made in haste or ignorance, potentially derailing projects or leading to costly mistakes. I've seen firsthand how not consulting with the right expert led to delays in rework on many projects, stifled team growth. If a PM is seen as the sole repository of knowledge, it discourages team members from stepping up, learning, and taking initiative. I made it a point to involve others, not just for their expertise, but to foster a team where everyone could grow and contribute. But the pressure to be omniscient often means you keep knowledge close, stifling collective growth. When a team member reaches out to me with a question, I ask that person what they think the answer is. Oftentimes, I immediately see the wheels start turning in their head. They were so certain that I would have the answer that they didn't even try to figure it out for themselves. They were looking for a quick answer from who they perceived to be the keeper of all project-related knowledge. I manage between 50 and 25 jobs at a time. I need my team members to be able to think for themselves, or I would be so busy answering easy questions I would never get any real work done. Stress and anxiety. The constant fear of being exposed as not knowing something can lead to significant stress. It's like walking a tightrope over a project's success, where any admission of not knowing could be seen as incompetence. I felt this anxiety, especially with Mike, where every question felt like a test I was expected to ace. Innovation block. Innovation thrives on questions, not answers. The myth of omniscience can block this by creating an environment where new ideas are less encouraged because the assumption is that all good ideas must come from the all-knowing PM. Instead, I learned to embrace the reality of not knowing everything. I started by acknowledging my limitations, which paradoxically increased my effectiveness. Leveraging team knowledge, I learned to tap into the collective expertise of my team, subcontractors, and even Mike's estranged wife for insights. This not only provided better solutions, but also built a more collaborative and less stressful environment. Continuous learning. I embraced the idea that every project was a learning opportunity. I wasn't afraid to say, I need to look into that, and circled back around, which opened doors to new knowledge rather than pretending to have all the answers. Building networks. I cultivated relationships with experts in various fields, ensuring I could quickly source the right information or advice when needed. Humility. This was perhaps the most liberating. Recognizing my own ignorance made me a better listener, more open to feedback, and ultimately more respected by my team and stakeholders. The myth of omniscience in project management is not just a fallacy. It's a barrier to effective leadership, personal growth, and project success. My journey through the realm of residential remodeling has taught me that admitting what you don't know is not a sign of weakness, but the first step towards wisdom and effective management. My job is not to be a walking, talking knowledge repository. My job is to manage the project, and that does not mean having all the answers. It means knowing where the answers can be found. It also doesn't mean finding all the answers. It means pointing a team member in the correct direction so they can find their own answers. And I can focus on higher level KPIs and team management. I'm the team leader, not the team micromanager. I empower my team with the resources they need to be experts in their own field and point them in the direction of the experts in others, building on borrowed skills. After 8 years as the founder and sole proprietor of a luxury kitchen and bath design/build firm, I was burned out. For 8 years, I had played the walking knowledge repository, which also meant that when the knowledge I doled out turned out to be false, I was solely responsible for the ensuing fallout. Everything fell on my shoulders, and I was exhausted from carrying the weight of it all. So when I made the decision to close the business and go to work for a startup, I was done with being Atlas, the great titan who was condemned to hold up the heavens for all eternity. I had acknowledged that I'm not strong enough or smart enough to run a remodeling firm by myself. and I was ready to be a member of the team. And I didn't even want to be the team leader. But regardless, the nature of remote work meant I was the only representative of the company in all of Austin and San Antonio. So I would have to lead a team of contract trade partners in order to be successful in my markets. In my previous venture as luxury kitchen and bath remodeler, I had kept all the unlicensed trades in-house. Everything was done by employees who I hired and trained and kept on the payroll. Only the plumber, electrician, and HVAC techs were farmed out to subcontractors. My thought process had been that I could more easily control quality this way. That turned out to be a fallacy that cost me a lot of money and potential success. Looking back, opting to contract out to skilled carpenters was undoubtedly the better choice for several reasons. Firstly, I realized that carpentry is an art and a science requiring years of specialized training and experience. Hiring and training someone from scratch turned out to be a significant investment in time and resources. By contracting out, I could have immediately accessed skilled carpenters who already had the expertise and tools needed for our projects. This meant our work quality could have been high from the get-go, without the lengthy learning curve of training new employees. Additionally, contracting would have allowed for flexibility, which is essential in the unpredictable nature of project management. There were times when we had multiple projects running simultaneously or when a project scope suddenly expanded. With in-house staff, I was limited by the number of employees I could afford to keep on the payroll. Contractors could be brought in as needed, allowing me to scale our workforce up or down based on the project's demands. This flexibility could have saved me from the overhead of maintaining a large, permanent staff during times of less activity. I also learned that the cost of contracting was often less than the total expense of hiring full-time carpenters as employees. When you hire in-house, you're not just paying salaries. You're also responsible for benefits, training costs, tools, and the potential cost of idle time if there's no work. Contractors came with their own tools and insurance, and I only paid for their services when we needed them. It was a pay-for-performance model that made economic sense, but I thought I knew better. Another aspect I only appreciate now was the reduced management burden. Training someone to be a great carpenter meant not only teaching them the trade, but also managing their career growth within the company. With contractors, I manage the project, not the career paths of individuals. This means less time spent on HR issues, performance reviews, and career development, allowing me to focus more on the project outcomes and client satisfaction. Lastly, the variety of skills that different contractors bring to the table is invaluable. Each carpenter has their own specialties, whether it's in cabinet making, framing, or intricate woodwork. By contracting, I can cherry-pick the best in each field for different aspects of different projects, something that was incredibly challenging to achieve with an in-house team without significantly increasing staff numbers and thus costs. Reflecting on it all these years later, the need to contract out rather than build an in-house team of carpenters was one of the best moves I've had to make. It ensures high quality, flexibility, cost efficiency, and allows me to manage projects more effectively. It has taught me that sometimes the best resources are those you don't have to own, but can simply access when needed. But nobody told me this. I had to go out and build a team of trade partners to work within this new startup's framework. Hiring and training a team of carpenters wasn't an option this time around. The color matching paint dilemma. One of the first and most important subcontractors I had to source was a painter. Roughly 1/3 of all residential remodeling scopes of work in the U.S. include painting. And the first painter I worked with was a man we're going to call Frank Hambone with Hambone Painting. I had been a member of a Facebook group dedicated to helping painters grow their businesses and had found Frank there. The scope of work on the project did not call for painting the entire house. Instead, it called for making a few drywall repairs and repainting only the affected walls. This would require a color match. Traditionally, matching paint colors meant removing a small piece of the wall and transporting it to a local paint retailer where they have machines that scan the piece and match the paint with pretty good accuracy to a custom blend. The downside being the fact that now you have to repair the hole where you removed a piece of wall, as well as the time spent traveling back and forth to the paint retailer. Frank, however, brought a revelation to the table. He arrived at the job and used a handheld scanning device that synced up to an app on his smartphone to match the paint to the closest Sherwin-Williams color available. He took multiple scans in different places along the wall and picked a color that came up the most often. He then used his color fan deck and put the selected color chip against the wall to confirm with his own eyes that this color was a good match. He didn't just rely on technology. He combined it with his expertise by cross-checking the matched color against his fan deck, ensuring the shade was spot on. I didn't even know that they made handheld color match devices, much less that they were available at any Sherwin-Williams for only $60. I had been doing it the same way for over a decade, and had I not hired Frank to come work on this project, I may still be cutting out pieces of walls and driving back and forth to paint retailers for color match today. I would probably even be training new hires in the old antiquated way, completely oblivious to the evolving world around me. This experience with Frank underscored a critical lesson about the myth that a project manager should know everything. I had been operating under the assumption that my knowledge was comprehensive, yet here was a clear example of industry evolution that had bypassed me. If I hadn't contracted Frank, I might have continued with outdated methods, potentially passing on this ignorance to new team members. It was a humbling reminder that no one can know it all in an ever-changing field like construction and remodeling. The incident with Frank taught me that effective project management isn't about pretending to have all the answers, but about recognizing when to bring in external expertise. His approach not only saved time and improved efficiency, but also broadened my understanding of available technologies and methods. It was a stark demonstration that in project management, acknowledging what you don't know is as valuable as what you do know. This experience with Frank Hambone was a pivotal moment in dismantling my own preconceptions about omniscience and embracing a more collaborative, learning-oriented approach to project management. Embracing not knowing as an opportunity to learn and grow. Embracing not knowing as an opportunity to learn and grow. That's what I want you to take away from this chapter of my journey through project management. It's a lesson that taught me so much about humility and adaptability. I came to realize later than I would have hoped that there's this myth out there, this idea that project managers should have all the answers. But I came to learn that's not just unrealistic. It can actually hurt your projects, stifle innovation, and block the path to effective leadership. My experiences dealing with clients like Mike or learning from folks like Frank Hambone have shown me that the real heart of project management isn't about knowing everything. It's about knowing where to find the answers you need. First off, you've got to acknowledge your limitations. Admitting you don't have all the answers isn't a weakness. Take what Socrates said about wisdom, starting with admitting ignorance. Once you accept that, you're open to growth, ready to learn, adapt, and get better at what you do. Then there's the power of collective knowledge. Every person on your team, every contractor, or external expert you work with brings something unique to the table. When you don't pretend to be the know-it-all, you create a space where everyone feels encouraged to share, collaborate, and contribute. This not only makes for better project outcomes, but also builds a culture where learning is part of the day-to-day. Project management is always evolving, with new tech, new ways of doing things, and new rules popping up. So, embracing that you don't know everything means you're always learning. Whether it's attending workshops, having discussions with peers, or learning from something like Frank's paint matching gadget, staying curious is your superpower. You can't manage alone, so building networks is crucial. Having a group of contacts, from seasoned pros to tech wizards, gives you a lifeline when you're out of your depth. This network extends your expertise, making you feel more confident and competent in managing projects. And when you drop the pretense of knowing it all, you become more receptive to innovation. Frank Hambone's story is a perfect example. His approach to color matching was something I never knew about, and it opened my eyes to new solutions, pushing both me and my projects forward. Lastly, by not being the only answer provider, you empower others. Letting your team figure things out, solve problems, and innovate on their own doesn't just lighten your load. It creates a team that's capable, self-reliant, and ready for any challenge. So, in essence, embracing what you don't know isn't about admitting defeat. It's about shifting to a mindset where learning, asking, and adapting are celebrated. This approach doesn't just make you a better project manager. It fosters an environment that's vibrant, innovative, and resilient. Through my own trials and errors, I've learned that the best project managers aren't the ones with all the answers. They're the ones who navigate the unknowns with grace, curiosity, and an open mind.
Well, there you have it, folks. Thank you, Snoop Dogg and Speechify. Chapter 3, Lesson 2, You'll Rarely Have All the Answers. Hopefully, it's kind of reshaped how you view the role of a project manager. We've debunked the myth that to be effective, you got to know everything. Instead, we've seen how acknowledging our limits can lead to better project outcomes, foster team growth, and encourage a culture of continuous learning and innovation. We learned from the story with Mike Oxmall that expecting omniscience is not only impractical, but also counterproductive. And through Frank Hambone's use of modern technology for color matching, we saw how being open to external expertise can introduce us to solutions that enhance our work's efficiency and quality. Remember, in project management and in life, humility isn't just a virtue, it's a strategy for success. Embracing what you don't know opens up a world of possibilities for learning and adapting and growing. Thank you for joining us on this enlightening journey through Chapter 3. Thank you, Snoop Dogg and Speechify, for reading it for us. Stay tuned for more insights, and don't forget, if you want to learn more about project management from the trenches, check out the Hard Knock School of Project Management. It's available at leadershipknocks.com and on Amazon. But if you go to my website, leadershipknocks.com, you can get an autographed copy. All right, let's keep learning together here at the Hard Knock University podcast. Today on the Hard Knock University podcast, I want to dive into a book that has been a game changer for me in both my personal and professional life, Verbal Judo, The Gentle Art of Persuasion by George J. Thompson. This isn't just a book about communication. It's about mastering the art of influence, de-escalation, and persuasion, especially in confrontational or high-stress situations. Dr. Thompson, with his background in law enforcement, brings a wealth of practical experience into this book, turning everyday conversations into opportunities for positive outcomes. The core philosophy of verbal judo is that words can be as effective as physical judo in redirecting energy, not just in confrontations, but in everyday interactions. It teaches you how to listen and speak more effectively, engage people through empathy, and avoid common conversational pitfalls. One of the most compelling ideas is the power of empathy. Thompson points out that empathy is the most powerful word in the English language. It's not about sympathy, but understanding others' perspectives, which is crucial in any project management role. He also talks about the strip phrase, which involves acknowledging what someone says without agreeing, which can defuse tension. For instance, saying something like, "I understand you're upset. Let's see how we can address this," can really calm things down. Another key takeaway is avoiding the word "but," since it tends to negate everything said before it. Thompson suggests using "and" instead to keep the conversation positive. Now let's talk about how I applied verbal judo in managing one of the most challenging clients I've ever encountered, Mike Oxmall, in Chapter 3 of my book. Dealing with Mike was like navigating a minefield, but verbal judo gave me the tools to handle it. I used empathy to acknowledge his frustrations without escalating the situation. When he demanded answers I didn't have, I'd say, "Look, I understand this is frustrating for you, Mike. Let's find a solution together." This approach helped redirect his energy towards constructive outcomes. I also learned to use strip phrases when Mike accused me of not knowing my job. Instead of getting defensive, I'd respond with, "I hear your concern, and I'm here to make sure we get this right." This kept the conversation constructive, and by avoiding confrontation, I maintained control of the interaction. When Mike got heated, I'd respond calmly saying, "I appreciate your point, and let's see how we can work with this," instead of meeting anger with more anger. Applying these principles in project management and residential remodeling has been transformative for me. In dealing with clients, especially during stressful project phases, using empathy to understand their expectations and concerns can prevent misunderstandings and build trust. When it comes to team communication, these techniques can turn potential conflicts into collaborative problem-solving sessions. By acknowledging team members' viewpoints, you foster an environment where everyone feels heard and solutions are developed collectively. Negotiations, whether with suppliers, subcontractors, or clients, benefit from the calm, persuasive demeanor taught in verbal judo. It's about finding a win-win situation without resorting to aggression or defensiveness. Managing change orders, which can be contentious, is another area where verbal judo shines. Clear, empathetic communication clarifies misunderstandings and aligns expectations without hostility. And when it comes to managing expectations in residential remodeling, where timelines and costs can fluctuate, these skills help explain changes in a way that clients feel involved and informed, reducing the likelihood of disputes. So in conclusion, Verbal Judo by George J. Thompson is a must-read for anyone in project management or anyone dealing with people in high-stress environments like residential remodeling. It's not just about getting your way, but about creating harmony, understanding, and effective solutions. The lessons I learned through Mike Oxmo's project have shaped how I communicate, how I manage projects, and how I lead teams, making Verbal Judo an invaluable tool in my project management toolkit. So I encourage you to pick up this book, explore its teachings, and see how you can turn any verbal encounter into an opportunity for better management, leadership, and better personal growth. Welcome back to the Hard Knock University podcast. Today, we have a special guest who's going to help us unpack one of the most pervasive myths in project management, the idea that you should know everything all the time. Joining us is Bruce Graham, a seasoned business coach and contractor with a wealth of experience in navigating the complexities of project management. Bruce, thanks for being with us here today.
Thanks for the invite. Appreciate you.
Yeah, man. Can you first tell us a little about your journey as a business coach and contractor?
Well, the biggest part of what I've been doing for 20 plus years is sales, right? And a lot, but probably 15 of those years has been in the construction industry, right? And being in sales and being in a professional environment, the construction environment or family, if you will, has been a journey, right? Because I've always held myself to a higher level, right? And higher expectations. And when you're working within an industry that there is a lot of leeway and a lot of flexibility beyond professional, not only with how they dress and how they speak and how they can turn on and off professionalism, where I like to keep it on all the time. It's certainly been a challenge in that respect. But the thing that I love the most is that it always allows me an opportunity to teach and to coach, and then to also to share my experience, right? And to be able to say the industry can change. And there are enough of us out there that care about professionalism that we can take it and keep it at a professional level all the time. Something else was that I get a lot of pushback from people that are even younger and maybe have been in the industry since they've been a teenager, right? And just go, oh, no, that's just how the industry is. You're not going to change it on your own. I said, you know what? If I'm going to be in this industry, I'm going to be professional. And it's amazing, just amazing how being professional sets you so far apart from everybody else. Now, everybody else's skill set may be greater, deeper, stronger, but at the end of the day, I think all of us have inside of us, because most of us were raised the right way, right? That we can't not like when somebody is professional with us, calling us, yes, sir, yes, ma'am, no, sir, no, ma'am, Mr. Jones, instead of going, yo, dude, hey, what's up? All that stuff. And so I keep it there. And I think that just as an experience, I've won so much more business than I deserve, just because I had a higher level of professionalism, calling people back, replying to emails, being timely, not blowing people off. It's amazing how much that small component of being professional wins you business.
Yeah, absolutely. Chucking a truck can certainly make a lot of money, especially, considering the shortage of skilled labor in the United States. But the ceiling is much lower.
Yeah.
When you take a professional approach and you clean up, you tuck your shirt in, you say yes sir, you put yeah,
You're not wearing
you
an
put
old T-shirt, right?
yeah
To the website.
yeah, you put the little booties on your boots, and take care of Miss Jones's carpet. You know what I mean? It takes you to the next level,
Right.
and that's where we want to be,
Right. Well, that's definitely where I operate and where I'm most comfortable. And yeah, it's just not worth fitting in and absorbing the I can't change the industry type of approach to it. So every business that I've worked in, including my businesses that I've owned, right? So I've owned a number of businesses, and including my current one, but in the other outside of the construction industry as well, it's been a high level of professionalism, and it's just the bottom line that you win more business when you're professional, because even though your prices may be higher, people are going to go with you because you take the extra steps, and it's just a matter of adopting them and believing in them, right? Because you can only fake being professional for so long before your true self comes out, right?
Yeah.
And so if it's always on and always just part of how you are and how you do things, then it's certainly not hard to stay there. And I just don't accept that, oh, that's just how the industry is, and I just don't buy it. I'm make my impact on that, or I'm going to win a lot of business right out from under you because I call people back, and I don't dress in ratty T-shirts and holy jeans and show up with a dirty truck. I take pride in what I do, and it's reflective in the work that I do and then in the people that I work with.
Absolutely. And, they say a rising tide raises all ships, so, as we take this approach, other people see that and say, man, I got to step up my game, and it does change the industry. Yes, I can't change the industry, but you and I can influence people around us, and collectively we can all change the industry. Let's get into the theme of today's episode, the myth of omniscience, the idea that, one guy, especially, the project manager, who's oftentimes expected to know everything, or the contractor, the guy that, the customer signed the contract with in the first place is expected to have all the answers. From your experience, how have you seen the myth of omniscience impact projects you've worked on or coached? And can you give us some examples where this expectation led to negative outcomes?
Certainly negative outcomes are part of the industry, right? That's the only way that we learn, right? I think that the biggest battle along the way is we're neck deep in what we know. And I don't think that we do a good enough job setting the expectations. So when we don't set the expectations, the customer, just like you said, thinks you know everything about everything, all aspects, right? And so whether you're focused on cabinets per se, right? They want you to be an expert in countertops and flooring and splash and everything else, right? So if you're setting the expectations properly, you have less of those circumstances. So early on in my career, not setting the expectations led to a lot of challenges, right? And most of those challenges are customer driven, right? And so you're kind of on the spot, and especially if you are face to face, right? And being face to face and not having the answers is a lot more difficult than not having the answers via email or on the phone, right? Face to face, every nonverbal expression that you have about your fear of not knowing everything really shines through, and most people will read nonverbals all day long, right? And so, a couple times not setting the expectations properly led to some very uncomfortable projects that were, I actually had this one lady, she was a foreigner from the Ukraine. She was about 4'0" and I'm 6'2". Can't see it sitting down, but I'm a tall man. I'm a large man. And she was screaming at me probably at least 4 times in the 7-month project that we did, which should have been literally a 3-week project. But her expectations were crazy out of this world, and I didn't set them properly. at the onset. And so having a 4'11" Ukrainian woman yelling at you that your standards are not my standards, it's an experience for sure. And there was no appeasing her. As much as her husband tried, unfortunately, in that dynamic, he was a husband that just said, whatever you want, you get. And that's really unrealistic in the real world. That might work behind closed doors at home, of you doing everything that you possibly can to appease and to make right and to give, so that standard stays. But when you introduce outside people, especially when you're, in this particular case, they were building a house, it was incredible to have that experience and have it just snowball into things, to at the point where at the very end, they decided that none of our touch-ups that we could do on our project were good enough. We ended up providing them with like 5 gallons of our paint and just said, we've tried everything that we could do. We actually even had our whole team, our whole service team, for a full day up in that house making corrections and adjustments and touch-ups, if you will. And still at the end of the day, it was not good enough. I mean, regional manager out there, had the quality control person out there, our office manager out there, 8 service guys and me. And it still was not, it did not meet her expectations. So setting the expectations, I believe, is critical. Certainly specifics in different jobs that I've done in different industries too, that you're the all-knowing of everything that has to do with it, right? And we just can't be experts in everything. It's just not possible. We know a lot, right, about a lot of things. And so the breadth is there. The depth is just, unless you're neck deep in like I am right now in cabinets, I mean, I have a pretty good understanding, but that still doesn't answer all the questions for all the people.
So in practical terms, what strategies do you recommend for project managers to set up these expectations and, make it clear that we don't have all of the answers and that we're not the repository for all construction knowledge?
Well, certainly setting the expectations, something that I like to do usually at the onset of our first meeting in person, typically in our showroom. I kind of establish who is the professional in the room. And I do that by asking, so Mr. So-and-so, before I go into depth on everything that we're doing here, I want to make sure that I'm not making it too elementary for you, right? So what do you do for a living? Oh, you're an aeronautical engineer. Fantastic. And ma'am, what do you do? Oh, you're a nurse. Well, fantastic. I said, well, so if, and I do this almost verbatim, I said, so if I need anything that has to do with aeronautics, I need to come to you because you're the professional. And if I need anything about medical care in the nursing field, I come to you, right, ma'am? Yes, that's right. Okay, well, here I'm the cabinet expert, right? And so I set those expectations, and then as I present, I said, okay, well, here's some Cabinet 101 information. And I go through a basic understanding and a basic knowledge base of what I have. And so someone told me a long time ago, as long as you know this much more than the customer about whatever topic you're talking about, you're going to win. You're going to win the conversation, right? As long as you're ahead. And so I also include that I say, look, I don't know everything about everything, but in those particular cases, I have resources. And then in the case of my business that I own called I Know a Guy Home Services, it's essentially a play on words, is that if we don't do it directly, I know a guy, right? We all can't be expected to know everything. And I'll refer back to, again, their trades or their professions and just say, there's no way that you can know everything about nursing. You know a lot because you're neck deep in it every day, all day. Same thing with the engineer. I said, but we want to make sure that we understand. And so I set that precedent ahead of time. And to let them know, yes, I'm the cabinet expert, and I can find things out if I don't know. I mean, I've only been in this industry about 8 years, and so you learn a lot, but you also can't know everything. But you do pick up stuff along the way. So in that respect, that's how I set the expectations. And I work to make it clear from the beginning that I know a lot, and in our different worlds, I know the most, but you're not going to know more than me. Right. And so I try to feel those out at the beginning, and then I'll refer back to it if it comes back, though, that they're coming across as they know more than me. And there's just going to be people, Mark, let's be frank, that believe that they know more than you about any and every topic. And so I have the flexibility in what I do to set the costs of the projects, right? It's not everybody has that flexibility, but in what I do, I have that ability in my professions that I do. So for the most part, I look for red flags, people coming across as, like you said, all knowing, right, about everything. And so that, oddly, that along with, let me show you a Pinterest of what I'm thinking of, or my inspiration for this project is, I mean, all three of those dynamics are indicators to me that this is going to be a more challenging project than you expect on the onset, right? You kind of come in neutral to everyone, and I have the ability to read people. I've been doing this a long time, right? And so you can read people right off the bat, and you already know that, well, if I'm going to work for them, and they're going to be way more challenging than the average person, right? And we have a lot of experience to know what the average is, right? And the red flags that say, hey, this is going to be a challenging customer, I charge appropriately. Had a guy, I have a project actually installing this morning, and it's simply 2 additional cabinets in a utility room that we're installing. It's already purchased them, already has them, and the install. So I get a text at 7:45 this morning, and it's a Saturday morning, right? And when we're doing this, and so already I know for the next project, if this guy is sending stuff this early and this often for just 2 additional cabs in the utility room, on my next project, I'm gonna charge appropriately, right? Yeah. And in this case, I think I have an opportunity, because he's doing a second project with me, to be able to make that adjustment cost-wise to raise the bar and raise the price. If I have to deal with it, my installer has to deal with it, and so I need to make sure that everybody's compensated for the level of, not only level of difficulty of the job, but also of the customer's interactions with you.
Yeah. You know, that's a good one. Can you give us another example similar to that one, where maybe you didn't set up expectations well enough, and you had to learn the hard way how important, setting expectations and making it clear that you're not, omniscient,
Sure. I think one of the biggest ones, right? So in my industry, I do a lot of parts and pieces of jobs, right? And we don't do necessarily a whole build. Well, I'm in the throes of a full build at this time. And so even though I've explained to my customer, who's also a friend of mine, that I've done all the parts and pieces, but I haven't done the whole thing before. So one, I'm doing my best to set those expectations ahead, and still I'm getting some pushback on, well, what about this and what about that, and shouldn't we do this? And I said, look, I'm more, it's developing, right? So it's more turning into more of a consultative position versus more of a general contractor, right? He wants to make all the final decisions. So on everything, he's wanting 3 bids on everything, right? And he'll make the decision, or him and his wife will make the decision on which ones that they want to choose, even though it might not be the guy that I recommended, right? You're wanting 3, and a lot of us don't know 3. If we know two foundation guys, right, then certainly that's a lot. We usually find one that's trustworthy, does good work, and we're full steam ahead with that guy, right? So knowing one, having one is pretty common. Knowing 2 that you can go to, and then knowing 3, so that's more time consuming because you're having to trust the reputation of someone else based on someone else's experience and not your own, right?
Mhm.
So that part of it is I'm learning as part of it and trying to set the expectations along the way, even though I was perfectly clear right at the beginning that this was my first full overseeing project, and that I have a mentor who's coaching me along the way. And they were all good and well because I'm also charging less than a general contractor with a lot of experience would. So you can't have both. You can't have all the experience and pay the less amount, right? So it's an ongoing process, and it's a learning experience for both of us. And just like me, he's done a lot of smaller projects that he's kind of oversaw, right? But this is like a building with half garage and half a casita and half of a salon. So it's a bigger project with a lot of moving parts. And so we're working through the communication and the expectations. And it's so funny as we were going through the contract that we signed together, and the first part, one of the first parts in there said that the homeowner's not going to be talking to the contractors, and all the communication should come back through the superintendent or the guy in charge, right? Which is essentially me, right? And so right at the beginning, they're like, wait a minute, if he's working out of the house and he's watching the project and he sees that something's going wrong, he's going to go out there and talk to him, right?
Oh, yeah.
Right. And so I said, yeah, I get all that. At the same time, we don't want verbal changes going on when we're not sticking to the plans, and then something doesn't align later on down the line and going, well, I wasn't part of that conversation, so I don't know necessarily. Right. And then towards the end of the contract, they're saying, we want you to handle all the communication. He doesn't have time to be interacting and stuff. And so even something as funny as that, before, over this hour and a half period of time that we're reviewing this contract, it's on one end of going, hey, we want to be able to tell them if we see something wrong. At the same time, we don't want to have to be watching it and having communication. I'm like, you're talking against yourself, right?
I have a great way to set up that expectation early on in a project, because of course I have the same thing in my contracts, that you leave the guys alone, talk to me.
Right.
And so what I do is I tell them, look, on every project, something goes wrong. Usually it's not a big deal. Sometimes it is. That's when I get to do my job. My whole job is to be an advocate for you and help you get through this project and get the best possible outcome. So since, especially in occupied homes, since you live in the home, when something goes wrong, you're going to find it first. That's when I need you to call me and let me go to work for you. And
that's good.
Just doing that, man, it's been a lifesaver for me.
I love that. I love that. And your experience certainly outweighs mine on the contractor side of things, right? You have years of experience beyond me. So getting those little nuggets, as I like to call them, brought to and shared with groups and individuals like myself is certainly helpful, again, to maintain a high level of professionalism and consistency, right? If that's your MO, if that's your normal process, then it happens every time. So you're setting that expectation every time. If you're having that conversation every time, and I appreciate the insights.
I mean, I've been swinging hammers since I was 16, and I certainly do know the industry well. But I mean, Bruce, you got 15 years on me, and you've been around the block. And I mean, I was inspired by you to take on this whole 52 books in 52 weeks thing. And it's been great, man. Now I'm doing this, the book of the week segment as a part of the podcast.
Nice.
And, you're one of the most humble guys I know. You do a good job of making it clear that you're not omniscient and that you have a lot to learn. And I really appreciate that about you. And I know that in the past, when I was younger, I certainly came off as, that cocky kid that thinks he knows it all, and I think that my friendship with you has helped me to humble down a little bit.
Well, I appreciate that. I mean, everything that I have is through the grace of God, right? And so I try to show that, right? Christ was a very humble individual, even though he was omniscient, right? And so even though he didn't carry himself that way. So if I can help you and help others to be humble and understand that everything that I do everything I know and everything I do is a gift from God, and share that through how I carry myself and what I do and what I say, then that's the best thing that I could do.
Yeah. At the risk of getting into the weeds, Christ certainly is omniscient. However, when he was in the flesh and blood and walking this planet, he certainly was not.
Right. And it had to be revealed to him.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But I mean, he certainly knew way more than we did. Right. As far as I understand it. Right. I'm on my walk daily. It's exciting. I'm learning new things all the time, and being introduced to this podcast and to your book and your insights. Again, I believe that is just God putting you in my path so that I can continue to be a better example of and more like him every day.
Sure. I love it. Let's get back on track. So for project managers or salespeople, contractors just starting out, how should they approach a project when they feel they aren't the most knowledgeable person in the room? And what advice would you give them to navigate this?
Well, you certainly want to have smarter people around you, right? I talk about a lot my circle of 5. And if you're the smartest person in that circle, you're in the wrong circle.
You're certainly hanging out with the wrong people.
Yeah. So I think it's the same thing in business, is to have more knowledgeable people. Like I said, I have a breadth of knowledge about a lot of different subjects and trades and things in general. But I bring in and have around me to support me people who are dialed in and deep. Everything that has to do with the roof, I'm going to have the best roofer that I know around me, the best foundation guy that I know around me to answer questions on my behalf. Because again, I know my goal is just to know this much more, right? And every time that I have those people around me in adjacent trades is a blessing, right? Not only to the success of that project, but also you're gaining insights that you're not going to have if you don't have those people close to you, not only in your projects, but also in your life, right? And so I think that's the biggest challenge that I think a lot of young entrepreneurs, young contractors, young people in sales do, is they set such a high expectation of themselves that they don't want to bring in other people so they still look like they're the smartest person in the room. I don't have that problem. It's certainly a maturity thing. Like you mentioned, when you were younger, swinging a hammer and you had a lot of skill sets, you didn't necessarily want those other people around because I was afraid when I had early on that if I had them around, they wouldn't think that I was very knowledgeable, right? Because I present myself typically above my own skill sets, right? Because I'm always learning, right? If I say if I know something, or I know about something, hey, I'm going to study, I'm going to look it up, I'm going to gravitate towards having support there, whether I get it in person, through the internet, however I get it. The next thing is to give. I think that's the biggest thing that a lot of young contractors don't want to do. Give free information and, let people know, hey, you could probably do this yourself. The challenge is, when you give information about that, there is such a small percentage of people that will actually do the work. right? And that's the difference, right? So I like to give away free information all the time because keeping it in and keeping it all to yourself doesn't benefit anybody around you. And personally, I want to help grow people. I want to grow salespeople, contractors. So in my business specifically, we train all the new salespeople. You and I had that dynamic when we worked together in that particular industry, and I thoroughly enjoy training and teaching.
Yeah, you've certainly got that teacher mindset, and you had alluded to earlier about that saying that if you're in a room of 5 people and you're the smartest person in the room, get out of that room. We say that, but in reality, it's better to stay in that room and mentor, be a mentor, help those people, again, rising tide raises all ships. So yes, you do want to get into those rooms where you're not the smartest guy, but when you find yourself in those rooms where you are the smartest guy, don't be an asshole,
Certainly not. I mean, like you said, I have a teacher mentality. I have a teaching mentality about that. What I just meant as I've not yet been in a room where I'm the smartest guy. So I am growing, and it's just not being necessarily the smartest guy, but I mean, in my circle of 5, I have people that are better in different areas. Right? They might be stronger in their walk in faith. They may be doing my profession longer, right? And so it's more holistic in my circle of 5 as far as personal growth. I don't mind being the smartest guy in the room when it comes to my industry, and I love teaching and I love training. We were at a networking event yesterday, and I like to share this nugget with everybody. So hopefully we get a lot of response and a lot of watches to this podcast, right? But something that I share all the time is that I never use the word price. I've replaced it in my vocabulary to be cost, because for a couple reasons, right? People don't cost shop. People price shop. You hear your prices are higher than his prices, and I shop here because their prices are better, and I go to H-E-B because Kroger's prices are too high, right? So I've replaced that in my vocabulary as it relates to cost versus price, because people understand there's a cost of material, there's a cost of doing business, there's a cost of overhead, there is a cost of labor. So people independently understand cost, and then at the end of the day, if they still are on point with, hey, your prices are too high for me, I simply say, we're not for everybody.
Yeah. I don't use the word cheap. I say affordable.
I love it. Right. And that's one of those other exchangeable, more relatable sayings or words, right? Because
it doesn't have that negative connotation.
Right. And you're trying.
I always want to clarify the triple constraint, where you can have affordable. Well, you have cost, you have timeline, and you have quality. And if you're going to have that low cost, that affordability, you can also maybe have it fast, but it ain't going to be good. And if you can have affordability and you can have good, but don't expect it to be fast. You can only have 2 of those items in that triple constraint.
I like
so you got to pick your battles.
Right. And what's more important to you, right?
Yeah,
and,
right.
and different projects will drive different desires in that same triple constraint, right? I just need a shed in the back so I can get all my lawn equipment out of the garage. My wife
and I need it this week.
About it.
Yeah.
It smells like gas in there. Okay, so affordable and fast. I don't need it to be great. I don't need it to be livable. I just need a roof over so that it won't rust, and I can accomplish this. So I get it. I love it. That's great.
Let's talk about the role that teamwork plays in dispelling the myth of omniscience. How can we foster an environment where team knowledge is leveraged rather than centralized?
Well, I think the team around you, right? Both in my current job and within the business that I run, I try to focus on that, right? And I will share with people, right? We have people in our, that I have access to, right? We've been in business, my job. That business has been in existence for 54 years at this point. There's a lot of knowledge that I have access to. So don't be afraid to ask me the hard question. I might not know it, but I have access to people who have lived it 20, 30 years in this industry, and I can get you an answer. As it relates to my business, right? I only refer small business professionals, more individual or family-owned companies, because in my opinion, I think the smaller guy works harder, because if he doesn't get that job or he doesn't do a good job on that particular job, then it has bigger, wider, deeper impacts to him. If the $130 million company that I work for has a bad job go wrong and they give a bad Google review, they still have, 400 other jobs that month that are going great, right?
Yeah.
And so we don't have
the executives still get their bonuses.
Right. And you don't have the luxury and the affordability to not do a good job. Right. Yeah. And so in my business, as far as a team is concerned, I only work with competent individuals that have shown that they can meet those expectations, because it's all reflective on me. If I'm referring you to a job, then I have to have all the confidence in the world that everything that you do on site is reflective of me. Right. And so I'm not going to, in my team aspect of it, the I know a guy team, right? I'm not going to refer somebody who is iffy or hasn't done a good job in the past. I just won't reuse them.
Yeah.
Right. You set the expectation high and you carry yourself at a certain level of professionalism. You need to have a support team around you that is at that same level or higher. So, certainly the team is important.
That being said, it's important to have a backup plan. Sometimes your A team just isn't available, or something happened, they're in the hospital, and you gotta try somebody new. Do you have any advice or tips on taking that dive and trying out somebody new?
Well, it's challenging, right? And it's a little scary using someone that you haven't known or based on somebody's positive experience with them or knowledge of them, right? And so a lot of times when you're getting referrals from people, you have to consider the source, in my opinion, right? Is that a person who just says, oh man, that guy's great. Oh man, that guy's great. Oh man, is that his mantra? And it may not be true. It just may be his mantra. So you have to consider that when you're using people from that guy who has that referral, or do you get a referral from somebody who's a little bit more honest and going, I've used him and he does okay work, right? Someone who will tell you the truth, right? And so having those people on your team around you that will be honest with you and say, I wouldn't use that guy again. I used him once, wouldn't do it again. That helps you make a better decision in that respect. So doing that is using not your A guy because he's not always available. You try to have an A+, an A, and an A-. I try not to, those are my 3 deep resources, kind of what I call it, so that if somebody calls and I refer somebody, I like to refer 3 options, because there is personality that will conflict sometimes. They may all do quality work, all do great work, but different people don't always get along with everybody. So there'll be one of those 3 of the 3 deep that I refer that will connect with that person, right? And back to your 3 levels, right? They may not be the cheapest, and maybe they were more honest about a timeline, right? So there are different things that connect different people, and all I can do is, in my in what I do for my business is refer the best people.
Yeah.
Here are 3 resources that I've either used personally or have used in the past.
Yeah.
So I have a A guy out there and maybe even an A- guy out doing my job today. He's still good. I'm just not as familiar with his work, seen his work, but he's never worked for me. And so this is actually a first job today that he's working for. I know a guy.
Yeah.
So I've been buzzed, right? And I think the job is done. It was a small job, but I'll be interested to hear his feedback afterward.
I'd never use a new guy on an occupied home. I don't know how that guy's personality is yet. And, in occupied homes, you have personalities that can conflict, Sure. So I always try to use them on an unoccupied home, get to know the guy first. If the quality's good, if he's sweeping up after himself and things like that, then we can talk about an occupied home.
That's a great rule of thumb when it's available. A lot of the work that I do, it's all occupied homes, a very few, right? And so I take guys that I've met out working in unoccupied homes, created some kind of dialogue or some kind of relationship. And I like I said, I have a gift. I've been doing it, working with people for a long time. So I can read people pretty quick and pretty easy. But yeah, it's a little scary sending somebody brand new into there. That's why I'm excited to have that follow-up dialogue.
How can technology or external resources help us with the pressure of being omniscient? And have you seen any innovative ways that your team uses these tools to manage projects better?
Well, I think that it's tough, right? Because all of and technology, a lot of that relates to social media and your presenting of how you're presenting yourself, right? You want access to more projects. And if all you're showing is driveways that you've done, right, then you're probably not going to get called for building a mailbox per se with grout and router. I had a guy who primarily does driveways and slabs and patios, but just the concrete part of it. And so I had a project of this lady, and she had a lot of external cracks in her mortar, all brick, stone around the outside. And so I reached out to him and said, hey, I know you do a lot of patios and stuff, but do you do any of this? Oh yeah, that's in my wheelhouse. And I'm like, wow, I didn't know, because all your technology, all your postings and everything was certainly more centered around patio slabs and driveways, right? And so he was like, yeah, that's part of what we do. And I was like, man, I didn't know, because what you're presenting wasn't necessarily that. So in that respect, I think it can be a double-edged sword, right? You want to show a lot of different projects, but you have a certain wheelhouse where you excel, that you know better than the others, right? And so do you show too much variety, and then you're called with all this stuff that's way outside of your wheelhouse, or do you stay streamlined? And for me, I haven't done a lot of social media, right? We're in our second year of I Know a Guy. And so that's part of what we're planning to do this new year. And we have to show a breadth of jobs and types of jobs, because the majority of our business is all referral business. And so have to show that as a wider breadth than someone like him, who just kind of wants to stay in this lane, right? Yeah. And so his presentation of what he does has to be a little bit broader than it's been, but it doesn't want to be too broad to where he's getting a lot of asking of, hey, can you do this outside of his wheelhouse?
Yeah. I'm going to give you another solid gold tip.
I'd love it.
Everybody's walking around with a very high quality camera in their back pocket. If you want to work for me, I manage 15 to 25 jobs at a time across 2 markets. I go all the way to Georgetown, north of Austin, and I go all the way to Castroville. I'm all over the place. It's impossible for me to walk every single job every single day. So if you want to work for me, every single day, I need pictures of the work, and I need to know what's completed, what you're working on, and what you're going to work on next. I need that update at the end of every single day. You're going to send pictures and an update, and in doing so, I have tons of pictures that I can use for social media. And I have a very concise update for my clients. Hey, today they finished up this, they're working on this, and tomorrow they're going to start working on this. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah, kind of a step by step, and then a visual support of that. I love it. Right.
Yeah.
And I've acquired a lot of that and have access to a lot of that over the years, and haven't really had the need before we opened our business to promote any of that. Right. It used to just be if you needed somebody and you asked me, then I could share with you. But I wasn't open seeking or throwing my hat into the ring for all different kinds of projects. And that's where I'm at now.
To close this out, how do you continue to learn and grow in your field, acknowledging that you don't know everything? And what practices do you follow to stay on top of your game without falling into that omniscience trap?
Well, I think the key really is personally, what I do is I do more job site visits when projects are going on, right? A lot of these projects that I do or I refer out, I ask my resources for timelines and when they're going to be out there, so that I can go out and see more of the quality of work, like on site, to see it in person, and then having conversations with the different builders and professionals in their field. And how did you do this? And what was an upside? What was a downside? If you can get that from someone in each job that I refer out, what was the upside? What was the downside? I had a guy go in and mount TVs this last week. And I said, how was it? The lady was great, paid after it was done. Okay, what was the downfall? Well, we kind of went in blindly with the wall mounts that we brought or that we did. If we could, in the future, find out if they want a flat mount, a tilt mount, an extend mount, that will certainly help make that part go smoother. And I was like, man, that's great. Learned another tidbit or another nugget about the questions to ask. And I think that is the key. Learning the questions to ask for the different projects, for the different industries. And I pick up on those all the time, right? Location is big based on where you're building, right? We had a mailbox built out in Atkins, which is all sand out there. So that's got to be built different than the driveway that I referred out that's being built up in Spring Branch, which is all rock.
Yeah, limestone.
Yeah, it's just different. So understanding location and the challenges that the individuals faced, right? Learning from their experience is just going to help me. I don't have to necessarily experience it, but I have to do the work to have those conversations. And those conversations are a lot easier when they're on site because they have time, right? Versus trying to grab a 10-minute phone call or a coffee or whatever so we could recap. Those people are on to their next job, their next bid, their next project. So that's one of the ways that I learn.
Yeah, and sometimes you do it the hard way. You fail to ask the questions. You make an assumption, and then you get negative feedback, and you go, you know what? I'm not going to make that mistake again.
Yeah, and especially when those lessons are financial. I took over a project from somebody who had started it, and the whole time they said, yeah, we want shaker doors, and I didn't confirm the door style with them, and come to find out that their idea of a shaker door, I have 5 options of shaker doors that are in that shaker door family, right? And I just assumed that it was one. I didn't confirm.
Yeah.
I ended up having to buy 42 doors that had to be replaced for that house, and a super disgruntled individual who was very upset at me because I did not know everything. I did not realize. He kept saying shaker, and I didn't hone in and dial in and say, okay, which shaker? Yeah. We have the Groveland, we have the Harbor, we have the Ranch House, we have the Gunnison. Those are all Shaker in the Shaker family. So again, setting that expectation first and going, look, you want a Shaker door? Choose from these 5 Shaker doors. So again, you're right. Some of those lessons are hard to learn.
Yeah. Bruce, do you have any closing thoughts or anything that you want to plug? Can you tell our listeners where to find more about you?
Yeah, so we're, I Know a Guy Home Services. We are essentially, we do small stuff, but most of our work is outside and referred out, right? So we have trusted individuals. Best way to get a hold of us is via phone, 830-293-3131, or you can always email me at bruce@iknowaguy.biz, and that's INOAHGUY.biz. It's our logo here is the ark, like Noah's Ark, and it allows me to not only help people, but also share my faith if it spurs a conversation.
And we'll certainly be sure to have all that contact information in the description. Bruce, your insights have been incredibly enlightening, especially in, challenging that myth of omniscience in project management, that idea that we got to know everything to be effective. It's clear that acknowledging what we don't know can actually lead to better project outcomes, stronger teamwork, and personal growth. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us today. For all of our listeners, remember, humility in management isn't weakness. It's strength that fosters innovation, learning, and collaboration. If you're interested in learning more, be sure to check out more episodes of the Hard Knock University podcast. And thank you. There you have it, folks. Don't forget to check out Bruce's work and stay tuned for more myth busting, practical advice, and real world scenarios. All right, everyone. Before we wrap up today's episode, I want to invite you, our listeners, to share your own stories with us. We all learn some of our most valuable lessons the hard way, and that's something we can all relate to, whether you're in project management, another profession, or just navigating life's challenges. I'm looking for stories where you faced a situation where things didn't go as planned, where you learned a significant lesson from not having all the answers or making a mistake. These stories don't have to be specific to project management. They can be from any aspect of life or work where a hard lesson was learned. Here's how you can share your story with us. On our Facebook group page, join our Hard Knock University group on Facebook. There you can post your story in a thread we'll create for this very purpose. It's a great place to connect with other listeners and share experiences and learn from each other. You can also comment on the YouTube video version of this podcast. If you're watching this on YouTube, drop your story in the comment section below the video. It's an easy way to share, and you can see what others are contributing too. We promise that some of the best, most insightful, or even the most humorous stories will be featured in future episodes of the podcast. Not only will you get your moment in the spotlight, but your experience could help others avoid similar pitfalls or gain perspective on their own challenges. So think back to a time when you thought you had it all figured out, only to be proven otherwise. Or when you learned something valuable through adversity. We want to hear about those moments of growth, no matter how tough they were at the time. Your stories are what make this community rich, and I can't wait to read them and share them with everyone, and maybe even turn those lessons into laughter or wisdom for our next episodes. I want to go ahead and read one. It's not a lesson, but it's a question from one of our YouTube comments. Ethan2336 says, do you have any tips for delegating? I know I need to delegate more, but I can't get away from the thought that it's better if I do it myself. And it is, but it takes much longer if I do everything myself. So how do I delegate better, but also balance time and quality of work? That's a great question. Delegating can be challenging and it can be scary, especially when you know that if you just did it yourself, you're going to get the exact result that you're looking for. Look, man, take the dive. Delegate it out. There's nothing that your team can mess up that you can't fix. And sometimes your team also needs to learn things the hard way. So let them make mistakes. Don't get angry. Let them make the mistake and then help them see what they did wrong and find solutions. Help them, fix it. Yes, it's going to cost you some money. Yes, it's going to cost you some time, but it's going to build that team member up. It's going to build your team into something better. You don't want to be a micromanager. Don't micromanage your team. Don't get too into the weeds. Make sure that they understand the vision and the goal, and then empower them to make up their own mind as to the best approach. Let them go out and do what needs to be done. And if and when they make mistakes, capitalize on those mistakes as a learning opportunity, an opportunity for growth for your team and yourself and for the greater good. So I hope that helps. I hope that answers your question. Everybody else, please head on over to our Facebook group or leave a comment on YouTube, share your story, and let's keep this conversation going. Thanks for being a part of the Hard Knock University podcast family, and I'll see you in the stories we all share together. Well, folks, that wraps up another enlightening episode of the Hard Knock University podcast. Today, we delve deep into Chapter 3 of the Hard Knock School of Project Management, titled You'll Rarely Have All the Answers, where we busted the myth of omniscience with Snoop Dogg. We explored how the expectation of a project manager to know everything can lead to burnout, poor decision-making, and stifle team growth. We heard from our insightful guest, Bruce Graham, about real-world strategies to manage projects without pretending to have all the answers. And we learned how embracing our limitations can actually empower us and our teams to achieve more. The moral of today's episode is clear. The greatest strength in project management, and indeed in life, lies not in knowing it all, but knowing how to learn and adapt and grow. It's about acknowledging that we're all students in this vast school of life, where every challenge is an opportunity for growth. So here's your inspiration for the week. Embrace the unknown. Celebrate your curiosity. Remember, it's in the moments when we admit we don't have all the answers that we open the door to innovation, collaboration, and true leadership. Every question you ask, every piece of knowledge you seek, every time you lean on your team or your community for support, you're not showing weakness. You're displaying the courage to grow, learn, and lead with authenticity. Keep pushing the boundaries of what you think you know. And never stop asking, what if? Or, what can I learn from this? Because in the end, the project of life is about the journey of learning, not about arriving at a destination of omniscience. Thanks for joining us on the Hard Knock University podcast. Keep learning, keep growing, and until next time, keep embracing the lessons learned from the Hard Knock University.